This morning, vandals target Melbourne's St Patrick's Cathedral, angry at George Pell's release. His accuser accepts the decision and calls for support for child sexual abuse survivors. The Sydney family rushed from quarantine to hospital. Some test positive as hundreds of others head home for the first time in weeks. And Donald Trump threatens to stop funding the World Health Organisation, claiming the WHO blew it.
Live from our Sydney headquarters, this is 7 News with Angela Cox.
Good morning. There is clear anger from some people in Melbourne refusing to accept the High Court's decision to acquit George Pell. The cathedral at the centre of the allegations against him left vandalised as white ribbons were tied up at the monastery where he spent his first night out of prison. Chanel Vella is at St Patrick's Cathedral for us. Chanel, how could this have happened?
Well, and when I was at the monastery last night, there was a lot of security there. There were police officers there and private security guards. And as you mentioned, people were tying ribbons to the front gates there. And when they left after tying those ribbons, they were questioned by police. But it seems they may have forgotten about security here at St Patrick's Cathedral, which overnight has been graffitied. There's writing scrawled everywhere, and it's all about Pell. Some clear anger here. In the last few minutes, maintenance crews have turned up. They are going to start scrubbing that graffiti off. In the early hours when we arrived this morning, they had tried to cover it, but they then had to remove those coverings so police officers could take photos. They're clearly investigating who scrawled all of this writing all over the cathedral.
And Chanel, we've heard this morning from witness Jay, the man who accused Pell of the historic sex abuse.
That's right. We spoke to his lawyer before the High Court decision was handed down, and she made it quite clear that we would not hear from him on the day, that he wanted to collect his thoughts and then come back to us with a statement, which he has overnight. It's an extremely calmly written statement. I'll read some of it to you. It says, "This case does not define me. I am not the abuse I suffered as a child. I am a man who came forward for my friend who sadly is no longer with us. I am a man doing the best to be a loving dad, partner, son, brother and friend. I'm doing my best to find and hold joy in my life and to provide a safe and loving home for my family." He also made a statement in his words by saying he wants abuse survivors to come forward. He doesn't want them to be discouraged by the High Court's decision yesterday. He says it is important for those people to come forward and tell their stories and be heard.
OK, thanks so much, Chanel. It's no surprise the Vatican has welcomed the ruling, but a pointed tweet from the Pope has stunned many. Without making direct reference to the case, Pope Francis asked Catholics to pray for all those who suffer because of unjust sentences. Sarah Greenhalgh has more.
Well, the Vatican has responded by saying it always had faith and confidence in the Australian justice system, welcoming the unanimous decision by the High Court. It released a statement which says, "Entrusting his case to the court's justice, Cardinal Pell has always maintained his innocence and has waited for the truth to be ascertained. At the same time, the Holy See reaffirms its commitment to preventing and pursuing all cases of abuse against minors." Now, Pope Francis spoke just hours after the ruling at a daily church service inside the Vatican. That daily mass has for weeks now been focused on the coronavirus pandemic, but today's was offered to those who have been suffering as a result of unjust sentences. The Pope then sent what has been seen by some as a quite cryptic tweet, essentially comparing the persecution of Jesus to the suffering of those who have been wrongly sentenced by, quote, someone who had it in for them. The Pope never actually named George Pell in either the Mass or on social media, but it is being seen as a message of support, and his words have certainly stunned many.
Now to the latest on the coronavirus. Both Victoria and South Australia have each recorded another death overnight, bringing the country's total to 50. There are now 5,997 confirmed cases here, just over 2,700 in New South Wales. Victoria has just over 1,200. There are 934 in Queensland, 415 in South Australia, 470 in WA, the ACT has 97, Tasmania 98 and the Northern Territory 28. Two members of a family in hotel quarantine have tested positive. This was the scene late last night when several children, flanked by their parents, were taken from the Hilton Hotel after presenting with symptoms.
In this case, one of the adults and one of the children in that travelling party have been confirmed, and obviously everyone will remain in quarantine, but we will also be managing and supporting that family.
The rest of the family has been tested and are waiting the results. Better news for hundreds of others who this morning left hotel quarantine in buses 14 days after arriving from overseas. Some complained about being closed off from the rest of the world. They're all now happy to be heading home. Natasha Squarey has been speaking to them.
Well, this is the first time these travellers have had fresh air in 2 weeks after being in quarantine here at the Swissôtel in the city. They've been here since March 26 after returning to Australia from overseas on the Norwegian dual cruise ship. The 288 travellers were forced into the 14-day lockdown and were free to finally head home at midnight last night. Some people were local and made their own way home, while others were transported onto buses to the airport. Of course, there was a lot of relief, and while many say the stay here was challenging, they understand it was necessary.
We just felt like we were a burden more than anything and not treated as, a guest.
All travellers underwent a final health check before they were released this morning. They've also been sent home with a letter from authorities confirming they completed their quarantine period.
Yeah, we had a health check yesterday, temperature and medical screening with questions.
Thousands of other returned travellers are still stuck in other hotels across the city, and they're due to be released over the weekend.
The federal parliament is preparing to pass a $130 billion worth of relief for Australian workers in a special one-day sitting of MPs. The Prime Minister assuring the nation Australia will find a way out of this crisis. Political reporter Olivia Leeming is in Canberra. Olivia, it was a message of hope from Scott Morrison.
And it was a rallying cry for unity, reassured by this historic government support for businesses and workers in distress. Now, a small cohort of MPs have returned to Canberra just for today to pass this JobKeeper scheme through both houses of Parliament by tonight to subsidise the wages of employees with payments of $1,500 a fortnight, protecting some 6 million jobs and maintaining that crucial connection with their employer so these businesses can re-emerge on the other side. Now, despite Labor's concerns that many casual and foreign workers will miss out, the opposition will vote in favour of this legislation so these payments can start to be delivered by the end of this month. Here's the Prime Minister addressing the Parliament, followed by the opposition leader.
It will be a fight. It will be a fight we will win. But it won't be a fight without cost or without loss.
While Australians are being forced to be 1.5 metres apart, in so many ways we have never been closer together.
Already more than 700,000 businesses across the country have registered for this JobKeeper payment for their employees. Ange?
OK, thanks so much, Olivia. The New South Wales Premier was keen to emphasise this morning that while social distancing practices will remain in place until a vaccine is found, other restrictions won't run that long.
I don't want to raise expectations, but at the same time, there could be a chance, if the health experts deem it appropriate, for us to look at some relaxation.
Potential changes in the next few weeks could involve term 2 of schools, and everything will be reviewed month to month. But Gladys Berejiklian stressed any change brings the risk of further infections. Boris Johnson's deputy says the PM will be back leading the UK soon. Mr Johnson remains in intensive care in a stable condition, and while he has received oxygen, has so far not needed a ventilator.
If there's one thing I know about this Prime Minister, he's a fighter.
Boris is very resilient, he's tough. Also, he's got a tremendous zest for life.
Despite his condition, Mr Johnson is said to be in good spirits. US President Donald Trump has slammed the World Health Organization, calling it China-centric. He's considering pulling funding from the WHO at the height of the coronavirus outbreak. More from Paul Caddack in New York.
Good morning, Angela. Yeah, Donald Trump lashing out at the World Health Organization, first on social media and then from the White House, confirming he will consider putting a hold on US funding for the UN agency. The US does provide the largest slice of funding for the WHO. Donald Trump says this goes back to when the US decided to start limiting travel to people from China, and he says he was criticised by the WHO at the time. The organisation did say that those sorts of travel bans were usually not effective unless they're done right at the beginning of an outbreak. Trump accusing the organisation of being very China-centric, accusing them of putting out a faulty recommendation.
We will look at ending funding, because you know what? They called it wrong, and if you look back over the years even, they're very much... everything seems to be very biased toward China.
This comes as the United States is in the week where they expect to see the peak of the virus outbreak. And there are some more positive signs here at the epicentre in New York State that the spread is starting to slow for another day. The rate of new people being admitted to hospital is down. The rate of new people being admitted to intensive care is also down. But we've also seen the deadliest days so far in the pandemic here, with 731 people dying in a day here in New York State. It took around a month for the death toll here in the US to reach 5,000, and we have now seen 5,000 Americans die in just the last 3 days. From New York, Angela, back to you.
Next in 7 News, the latest from court as a former top detective is sentenced for making illegal recordings. And the lessons from Paris, how the city is dealing with those who ignore social distancing. Former senior detective Gary Jubelin is waiting to be sentenced after he was found guilty of unlawful recordings during the William Tyrrell investigation. Brian Seymour is outside Sydney's Downing Centre. Brian, when is it expected to happen?
Any moment. They've just broken for morning tea, and we've heard character references in this sentencing hearing for the former lauded, decorated police inspector, from the former Assistant Commissioner Nick Caldis, Greens MP David Shoebridge, and another person, also the foster mother of William Tyrrell. Of course, he vanished in 2014 from his front yard of his foster home. Gary Jubelin was convicted of recording 4 phone conversations, 2 of them on the phone, 2 in person, in just earlier this week, between 2017 and 2018, of a man he believed was involved in the disappearance. That man, Paul Savage, has never been charged. He didn't have an alibi for the time that William Tyrrell disappeared. That sparked police interest in him. But even this morning, the current Commissioner, Mick Fuller, was talking about the potentiality of Gary Jubelin maybe facing up to 5 years in prison.
We shouldn't forget about the other 32 years of good police work that he did. He shouldn't be demonised. He's paid the price for something that he's done.
Yeah, and that's a sentiment echoed on social media and here in the character references. This morning, the former Inspector Gary Jubelin, the 57-year-old, described as an outstanding police officer with decades of service, a person who stood up for families and was dogged in his determination to get them answers and to get them justice. Now he's waiting to find out what justice he will face when this sentence is handed down, we think, within the next hour.
OK, thanks so much, Brian. The end of an 11-week lockdown in Wuhan has been celebrated with a massive light show. The Chinese city, which was the epicentre of the coronavirus outbreak, is now allowing its 11 million residents to freely travel in and out of the city. China has reported no new cases of the virus in the past 24 hours, although the veracity of the country's coronavirus numbers have been questioned. As France tries to slow the spread of COVID-19, authorities in Paris have just banned almost all outdoor exercise. No one is allowed to go for a run, walk or cycle between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. The city's mayor says the restriction is aimed at getting people to exercise when the streets are quiet. Time to check the financial markets. The ASX is down 32 points. The Australian dollar is buying 61 US cents, 66 Japanese yen and $1.03 New Zealand. Toyota has recalled 45,000 cars over concerns the vehicles might suddenly stall. The issue relates to potential problems with fuel pumps on 7 models which were sold nationally after October 2013. The vehicles affected are the Kluger, Hilux, Camry, Corolla, Land Cruiser, Prado and the FJ Cruiser. Next in 7 News Sport with Jim Wilson, including the latest on the AFL and NRL seasons in their bid to resume, plus the creative plan of the UFC's boss to keep the sport going.
Good morning, everyone. The AFL has sent a memo to all 18 clubs confirming the quarantine hub is being discussed. And Richmond advisor Neil Balmer has called for calm, saying any drastic changes to list sizes and salary caps will diminish the product.
It seems to be a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to the fact that all of a sudden we've got a different financial position. I think we understand that. I think we've got to be really careful about making those decisions. I think the product that we provide for the people to come and watch our blokes play is a very good product.
The AFL will give an update to clubs again on April 27 on a potential return date. NRL players could be forced to endure 2 weeks of solitary lockdown under a proposal to get the season back up and running. The league's Innovation Committee has been told players and staff will have to be confined to hotel rooms for 14 days before being isolated in bubbles away from the general public in order for games to resume.
We aim to get our competition back up on the road, but we're not going to go in without having looked at all the details and making sure we tick off the boxes as far as the biosecurity is concerned.
And one of the Bulldogs sacked and deregistered over the schoolgirl sex scandal, Jayden Ockenbaugh, is appealing his indefinite ban for the NRL. The appeal will be heard by the NRL Appeals Committee. Israel Folau is in line to make his return to international rugby league. Tongan rugby league officials have indicated the former Wallaby star will be included in their 2021 World Cup squad in England if his form warrants it. Folau signed with French side Catalan Dragons in January after being sacked by Rugby Australia last year for his homophobic rants on social media. This health crisis is forcing sporting administrators worldwide to think outside the square in order to salvage their seasons. In the US, Major League Baseball is considering a plan similar to Rugby League where all 30 teams will be placed in an isolation bubble in Phoenix and play the entire season in front of empty stadiums. Now, the boss of the UFC, Dana White, says he's secured his own private island to stage fights on.
So I'm going to continue to pump fights out. I've also secured an island. I've got an island. The infrastructure is being built right now. We're going to do all of our international fights on this island.
White plans to stage UFC 249 on Sunday week on that island. Former Wallaby Quade Cooper has always had plenty of skill with a rugby ball, and it turns out he's pretty handy with an American football as well. This video of a behind-the-back pass has gone viral in the US with 300,000 views on Instagram, and it's even led to a copycat attempt from the AFL with St Kilda's star recruit Brad Hill giving it a shot as well. They're pretty talented, aren't they, Ange? We'll have more sport coming your way at 4 and 6.
Good stuff. OK, thanks so much, Jim. Next in 7's Morning News, the national weather forecast with David Brown. Australians should look to the skies tonight to catch a glimpse of the largest supermoon of 2020. It's already risen over hushed cities across the world. Moon gazers were treated to this view over London's Tower Bridge, though with a lockdown in force, the streets were very quiet. In Germany, several people gathered to watch the spectacle over Berlin. A supermoon occurs when a full moon is near its closest point to the Earth. Let's get a check now of the weather forecast with 7 News meteorologist David Brown. How's it looking, Brownie?
Yes, good morning, Angela. We've still got summer-like heat continuing to affect the southwest corner of WA. In contrast, showers are clipping the eastern seaboard. Let's go to the weather wall. In fact, we're going to pop into Brizzy. A few passing showers today and a forecast top around 27 degrees. Sydney, well, it's cloudy. Some showers are moving through. Most of them, though, are confined to the coastal suburbs. Today's top around 21 degrees. Melbourne, fine, cool, partly cloudy and around 19 degrees. And let's pop into Adelaide now. We've got clear blue skies and a forecast maximum 21 degrees. In the west, we've got hot air all the way from the interior that's streaming into the southwest corner of WA. That will continue for another day or two. As we head to the eastern seaboard, this is the unstable easterlies that's driving the showers along the coastal fringe at the moment. But the thing we're keeping an eye on is this developing trough. As that intensifies, you'll notice areas of rain starting to develop across the interior tomorrow. Might be some isolated thunderstorms as well. And there is a change approaching the southwest corner of WA, but I think Perth will miss out. In fact, sunny tomorrow, 33 degrees. For Adelaide, it should be fine, partly cloudy and around 23. Melbourne, sunshine, light winds, 22 degrees. Sydney tomorrow, some showers are likely at around 23. Some showers also in Brisbane are forecast top there at 26 degrees. As we have a look at Friday, change making its way towards the southern states. Melbourne fine around 23 degrees, but check out Perth, the heat continues on Friday. 36 degrees. That's the latest weather. More details coming your way at 4 o'clock, Ange.
OK, thanks so much, Brownie. And that is 7 News to Now. We'll keep you up to date throughout the day. I'm Angela Cox. Thanks so much for your company. Have a great day.